So about a week ago I made a video about the fact that I was deciding to put Latin aside for a while and instead focus on French. And over that past week I have been doing really well and I have been enjoying it. For example, I believe, not yesterday but the day before, I studied French for 7 hours and 44 minutes. And the day before that I studied it for 7 hours and 18 minutes. So I have been putting a lot of effort into it, but the fact that I've been doing so, that I've put so much time, so much energy into it, has made me think about how I'm spending my time in general. Because just coming into French, knowing how much time and energy I put into Latin, knowing that if I really want to get to the level of French that I want to, I'll likely have to put in hundreds upon hundreds of hours, at least over 1,000 hours, just to be able to really read proper history books, proper books I'm interested in. You know, it's countless hours, it's 2 years, who knows how long of my time that I'm really going to be focusing on this. I'm really going to be putting so much energy in it, and like anything else, there's the cost of actually putting energy in, there's the cost of putting hours in, putting the years in, but then there's also the opportunity cost, the lost opportunity of the fact that every day that I put into French, every hour that I put into French, any kind of thought, any kind of effort I put into the language, is time that I'm not putting into anything else, whether it be reading books, talking to my girlfriend, studying something else. I don't know, it could be exercising possibly, it could be something that I've not even thought about. There could be things that I haven't discovered, that I haven't looked into, that I could really enjoy and benefit from, that I would simply never discover because I'm putting so much time, effort and hours into French. And of course, I do want to learn the language, I do want to learn several languages, I think it would be very beneficial. But it's just a matter of the fact that I know it's going to be so much time, and it's as beneficial as it would be, is it really worth it? Because the main reason I want to learn French isn't to talk to in the language, it's not to communicate to anyone. 99% of the reason is simply to read books, maybe to a lesser extent consume French media, the vast majority of which that I would want to look at least is all in English, or if we're talking about movies and such, English subtitles. And no matter how much time, effort, hours, years I put into French, again among the other languages that I want to learn at some point, which would be German, Latin, Ancient Greek, possibly an Asian language, possibly another Romance language, and who knows what else I could get into. So no matter the time and energy I put into French, unless I really put in an insane amount of time, and again the opportunity loss is just insanely high, I'm never going to get to the level of French where I can read, say, a book on the French Revolution in French, and even if I'm at a high level, even if I can read every word in the book, I understand the book perfectly, I can read the book fluently, I can do a video in French fluently talking about the book. The level that I would likely be at French, even if it was high, even if I'd be considered completely fluent in the language, is always going to be lower than my English level. So if I was to read a book on the exact same topic, possibly even the same book that's been translated into English, I would get more from it. The same goes for literature, maybe not poetry, but I'm not into poetry. So if I was to read, say, The Count of Monte Cristo in English as compared to French, I would be losing something from the English translation. But as much as I'd be losing for English translation, I would also be losing a lot if I was to read it in French, because again, even if I was to say put in 2,000 hours, 3,000 hours, thousands of hours into French over the course of 5 years, I probably would, or no, I'm going to say that I definitely would be able to read The Count of Monte Cristo in French. If I put that in that many hours, that many years, I could read it definitely. Maybe not perfectly, maybe there's a few words, but pretty fluently, and I'd be fluent enough to speak about it. But the level that I would be at, again, would still be lower than English, so whatever I would lose by reading the English translation of that book, because I didn't read the original French, I think I would lose at least as much, if not almost definitely more, by reading the original translation, even though it's in the original French. Because there's just certain things that I'm not going to get, even if I know every word, even if I understand all the grammar, all the syntax. I feel like it's still not going to be natural to me, even if I'm at a high level of it where I can speak fluently. There's always going to be something that I can miss. So therefore, what is the point of learning French? If I want to learn French to read books, when I know that all of these books, and again to a lesser extent other media, when I know all of these books, all of this media is in English, the vast majority of it, why go through the process of thousands of hours to learn French? Why go through the process of several years? Again, maybe not thousands of hours, but certainly over 1,000 hours, 2,000 hours. When I could read these books today, right now, I could just go home when I'm done this video, get the Count of Monte Cristo on my phone and read through it. Why should I have to wait several years, countless hours to be able to read it, and probably get an inferior experience, even though it is the original, than I would if I was to read it in English? And that goes for countless books. What if instead of learning French, instead of learning German, instead of learning whatever other language I was to learn, I was to instead do serious research, read serious books about that country, about that culture, about the language that surrounds it. I could read countless French books, political books, philosophical books, religious books, fiction, non-fiction. I could read possibly as much as I would have wanted to read after learning the language in English and get virtually everything from it. So the question is, why learn French at all? Why bother? Why bother spending so much time to have, again, which is almost definitely going to be an inferior experience to English? Again, even if it is the genuine, authentic copy of the language, it's not inferior because the thing itself is inferior. It's rather that my ability in French will always be, again, unless I was to put in an unimaginable amount of time into it, will always be inferior to my level in English, to such an extent that the experience for me will be inferior. So again, the question comes, why learn French? Why learn German? Why learn Latin even? Is it for superficial reasons that I think, again, to be really crude, that it'd just be cool, it'd be interesting to learn the languages? You know, when I look at myself, I like the idea of 10 years from now being 30, knowing how, being able to speak French, being able to speak German, being able to read ancient Greek and Latin fluently. Is it really that superficial? Is it, you know, am I going to waste a whole decade of my life potentially for this superficial reason of chasing these languages, of being able to understand them, and therefore having my experience and understanding of the actual cultures, the actual histories, the actual books, again, being far less than what it could have been if I was to spend those 10 years, instead of learning the languages, simply consuming all of this media, 95% of which, at least that I'm interested in, does have decent English translations or decent English subtitles. When it comes to Latin, I've put so much time into Latin, I've put so much effort into it, and I am genuinely enthusiastic about the language, genuinely passionate about the language itself, as well as the history behind it. I don't think there's any chance that I'll ever drop that completely. I don't want it to be a big focus, a main focus as it has been, but it's always going to be something that's on the back burner. It's always something that I'm going to put some time, thought and effort into. But again, I really think that instead of wasting my time on solely learning Latin, solely learning French, you know, consuming very basic vocabulary, working at this very low level, I could just be reading the books. For a while, I didn't even want to read ancient Greek philosophy in terms of Plato and Aristotle, or any of the plays, any like Thucydides, any of the Greek authors. because I had this grand idea of, well, I'll learn ancient Greek first, I'll learn the language, I'll be able to understand it, I'll be able to read the language so I can read it, the authentic text. And if I was to do this, I also felt this way about Latin, I would have to spend several years before I could even pick up any of these really essential books. And I have read a decent amount of them. I've read about a third of Plato, some of Aristotle, Thucydides. I've read a few books and I have got a decent amount from them, and I'm just thinking, well, if I was to go ahead with my idea that it has to be read in the original language, I wouldn't have read those books for, again, years upon years, and I would have put so much time, so much effort into it, when the fact of actually just sitting down with the book and reading it and be able to understand it and comprehend it in English and getting 99% out of it, even if a slight bit is lost in the translation, it's just so much easier, it's so much less time consuming, it's so much more thought provoking, and I gain so much more out of it. I don't know if I'm going to abandon language learning completely. Again, it's always going to be an interest, at least for Latin, and I think at some point in ancient Greek. But I have decided to put down French, which is something that I've been thinking about for a few days. Again, the idea of spending so many hundreds of hours, even if it's just a year, on French in the way I have Latin, it is a bit draining, even if the language is significantly easier. So just to wrap up, again, Latin's still something I'm going to be doing. I'm putting it on the back boiler. It's not something I can really focus on as much as I have, but it's a language I definitely intend to learn at some point. I think it would be better if I simply passively learn the vocabulary. For example, while I'm at work, continue to make the vocabulary lists that I've talked about in previous videos, so that my vocabulary is always improving, and then very occasionally looking back at it to read it, which is not so efficient, but it'll let me read more Latin literature. It'll let me read, you know, Horace, just Livy, Cicero, Plautus, Catullus, any of the names you could possibly think of. Even Descartes, a kind of medieval and Renaissance figures. So I'm going to focus less on language learning and more on reading books, and at least for some of them, I hope to make videos on them, the ones I find interesting, the one that maybe challenge my ideas. And I think that those videos are going to be a lot more interesting than me just sitting here complaining about languages, complaining about how hard it is to learn grammar and syntax. Dog.